successful one. And those 880,000 ceramic poppies represented every person that died from Britain in World War I. So that was to mark the centenary of World War I. I don't know if you know that, do you know this man, Woodrow Wilson? Some of you will know. So Woodrow Wilson used to be the President of the United States. He was the president when World War I was going on. And when America came in, the World War stopped quite soon. Now, after the World War, Woodrow Wilson said, you know what? Why don't we form a society? Form a society so that we won't go to war again. They called it the League of Nations. It's the precursor to the UN. Well, all the Europeans said, okay, we'll do that. But the Americans said, no way, we don't want anything to do with it. Leave it to the Europeans, they're always fighting. Woodrow Wilson, thinking he's a clever man, he said, you know what, I'm going to convince America to join. Because if we leave the League of Nations to the Europeans, they'll punish the Germans and it will make everything worse. Okay. Sadly, Woodrow Wilson had a stroke. When he had a stroke, he couldn't do anything. In fact, his wife was really the President of the United States at the time. Now, what happened then was that the Europeans did punish Germany. They made Germans into second-class citizens in Europe. And then, of course, this individual came along and said, no, we're not second-class citizens. We are going to rule for 1,000 years. Now, I always ask this question. If Woodrow Wilson never had a stroke, if he was able to convince the Americans to join the Europeans, I wonder if they would have then been able to punish the Germans so severely and leave space for this man. Why am I telling you this? I'm telling you this because one individual's health is not just about the individual. It relates to your family. It relates to your community. It can even relate to the world. People often say to me, Dr. Chidi, I like what you have to say, but you know what? I want to live my life. Eat what I want, do what I want. And now I ask myself, when you get sick, who is it that has to look after you? It's your family. It's not just about you. It's about the people around. When we're looking after our health, it is not just for us. It is for those that we love as well. And that is why I do this thing called Life Colors. As I've said, this is entitled Guard Your Heart. You know the text in the Bible, Proverbs 4:23. Guard your heart with all diligence, for out of it spring the issues of life. Okay, let's go ahead. Look, this is the heart. We know what the heart is. It's a big old pump in the middle of your chest, and it shoves blood around the system, oxygenates it, and then it passes through these arteries. But you know what heart disease is, do you? Heart disease is just where you get these arteries starting to close down because of plaques, okay? They're starting to close down because of plaques. They've got cholesterol and fat, and it narrows the arteries. When it narrows the arteries, you can't get enough blood to your organs, and if you can't get enough blood to your organs, you get strokes and heart attacks and all sorts of problems. Okay, why do we get it? Why do we get it? Well, the question is always, is it genetic? Now, I always say, never blame your parents for the condition that you're in. You know, saying it's genetic is really like saying, well, it's not my fault, it's my parents' fault. In fact, I was once working in a hospital in the emergency department, and a man had a heart attack one night, and we managed to keep him alive. I mean, it's not often that we do that in hospital. Managed to keep him alive, and I remember seeing him the next day. He was sitting up on his bed, and he had a packet of cigarettes by his bed. And I said, oh, you're keeping the cigarettes just as a memento. He goes, no, I'm going to go out for a cigarette soon. I said, but you've just survived a heart attack. You know, taking cigarettes might give you another heart attack. He said, no, doctor, don't worry about that. You see, my grandfather had a heart attack. My father had a heart attack. I was always going to have a heart attack. It just runs in the family. You know, I always say, you know, if there's any lesson that we learn from the Garden of Eden, it is don't put blame on somebody else. You know what I understand? God blamed Adam, Adam blamed Eve, Eve blamed the serpent, and of course the serpent didn't have a leg to stand on. Some of you understand what I'm talking about. I'm just seeing if you're still awake. I was just seeing if you're still awake. Look, when I went to medical school, there is no way that you can qualify from medical school unless you understand certain signs and symptoms, and you must understand what a heart attack is. And I think this individual shows all the signs of heart disease. Heart disease. Now, he may not have a pain in his chest, but he has it. Look, if he's inactive, if he has a poor diet, if he's stressed, overweight, drinks, smokes, guaranteed he already has heart disease. They realize you're living in the United States of America. Do you remember there was something called the Vietnam War? Yes. There was a Vietnam War. Do you know the average age of the soldiers that went to the fight in the Vietnam War? 19. Well, when those people were coming back in body bags, because loads of them did die, and they did autopsies on the bodies of 19-year-olds, they realized that they all had severe heart disease already at 19. And why was that? That wasn't because it was handed down to them, it was because of their lifestyle, it was because of what they were eating, what they were doing, the amount of stress they were under. It takes me back to a gentleman called Esselstyn Caldwell who did some really wonderful experiments. And the experiment was this. He took a group of people who all had severe heart disease. In fact, totaling them together, I think it was 18 of them, and totaling them together, they all had 49 cardiac events. What does that mean? Chest pain, strokes, heart attacks. They all had that in the few years before. All he did was change their diet to a healthy plant-based diet. That's all he did. And then what happened? Most of them had no cardiac events for 11 years following, and many of them showed the signs of reversal of heart disease. You understand what I'm talking about? So the arteries are now opening up. When I trained as a surgeon, I had to do cardiothoracic surgery. Now, that was a tough job, but during the day, it meant I had to assist in 3 heart bypasses every day. Hard work. I mean, it's really, really tough. And what is a heart bypass? You crack somebody's chest open, you stop their heart, you take out some of their artery, you replace it with another. It's a big job. And after that, you're in pain for many, many months after. So 3 of those we would do every single day. But what this gentleman did was naturally open up the arteries without any surgery, just by changing the diet. This is reversal of heart disease. In fact, you can see, I think you can see this. Let me just have a look. So this is the before. This is an angiogram. We put some dye into your veins so that you can see the arteries in the heart. This is before. You can see this little kink here, right? That's the heart disease. This is after. This looks normal, right? This looks normal. Now, if I was before my colleagues at the hospital and I said, yeah, this is the before and after of the operation, they'd say, yeah, well done, Dr. Chidi. This was just 18 months of a proper, healthy, plant-based diet, completely free. No surgery, no medicine, no side effects. So it's the reversal of heart disease. By the way, if you go to medical school today, you are still not going to learn about this. What you will learn about in medical school is how to give drugs, how to operate. That's it. You are never going to hear about this. So, okay. So that's what's going on. This is heart disease. Okay, we're saying guard your heart. At the heart of heart disease, no pun intended. Oh, my goodness, I'm just seeing. I mean, some of you are here. At the heart of heart disease has to be high blood pressure. Do you know anybody with high blood pressure? Yeah, we all know somebody with high blood pressure. If I was to take all of your blood pressures here, many of you would have high blood pressure. Now, we say that normal blood pressure is 120/80. By the way, that's the maximum, right? That's like the speed limit. We should not be aiming for that. We should be aiming for lower than that. A big proportion of Americans have it. But what we want to do, okay, we're not working again. Yes. No, not working. Anyway, so, okay, you're doing it now, are you? Okay. Does this work? Oh. Okay, we're back. Thank you. So the high number, 120, is the maximum blood pressure. That's the pressure in the system when the heart is pumping blood out of the system. The lowest part, the diastolic, is when the heart is at rest. So that's what those numbers mean. Why do we get hypertension? Is it genetic? As I said, I've already given you the one about Adam and Eve, right? So I don't have to repeat that. Right, so it's not. If you go to your doctor and you say, "Doctor, I've now got high blood pressure," your doctor will say, for 95% of you, it's essential hypertension. What does that mean? What does that mean? Well, in the English language, that means it's necessary. That's not what they mean, though. Essential in medicine means we don't know what the cause is. 95% of people, we don't know why you have high blood pressure. Only 5%, we have an idea. But they'll tell you this. They'll tell you this. They'll say, but there are risk factors for high blood pressure. There are risk factors. You've probably heard them. If you have a family history of high blood pressure, if you're Afro-Caribbean, if you're a male, if you're obese, diabetic, a smoker, lots of salt in your diet, loads of stress, or sedentary lifestyle, meaning you just don't do any exercise at all. Your doctors will tell you these are the risks for high blood pressure. I'm going to explain to you that you don't need to be a doctor to understand that the risks are probably the causes. Yes? The diet, the stress, the sedentary lifestyle, those are the causes for high blood pressure. It's amazing that the medical profession doesn't want to embrace this, but they are the causes. Now you may be asking, but some of them don't seem very fair, those top three. So if my family has high blood pressure, does that mean I'm going to have high blood pressure? Why should it be that if I'm black, I have higher blood pressure? And why should it be if I'm a male? So they don't seem fair, but let me explain them to you. As I've said before, because your family has high blood pressure doesn't mean you're genetically predisposed. There is no gene for high blood pressure. What it does mean is that you have a lifestyle that's probably more like your father and your mother. And if they had high blood pressure and you like the same food that they do and you do as little exercise as they do, you're probably going to get high blood pressure. Simple way to avoid that is to change your lifestyle. Your blood pressure starts to come down. Why on earth should black people have higher blood pressure than anybody else? Any ideas, folks? So black people have a different diet? Well, why should black people have a different... Why? Why should they have higher blood pressure? Okay, for black people they have more stress? Woe is us. We have the... No, look, the reason is quite simple. The reason is quite simple. The reason why black people have higher blood pressure than Caucasians is because we come from hot countries, right? Yes. With lots of sun, which means that we would perspire a lot. Now, to stop us from dehydrating in perspiration in the hot countries, our physiology is slightly different. We hold on to water a little bit more. How do we hold on to water a little bit more? We do it by holding on to salt a little bit more. Now that's fine when you're in Africa and you're eating natural food. When you come to an environment where there's loads of salt in the diet, like America, like Europe, we hold on to salt much more. That means our blood pressure goes higher. And now why should men have higher blood pressure than women? Oh, that's quite easy. Everybody knows that. Everybody knows that. The reason why men have higher blood pressure than women is because men have to live with women. Isn't that right? I think, well, yeah, I can only hear women laughing. The men are being silent. The men are just saying, yeah, actually, that's actually right. No, the real reason is that women have this wonderful hormone. It always gets a bad rap. Estrogen, yeah? Estrogen. Estrogen protects women from high blood pressure until they reach the menopause. Okay, so those three things that look like they're unfair, you can do something about. Okay, so that's the high blood pressure. What can you do to lower your blood pressure? Water. Did you know that the name for Minnesota, do you know what the name means? Okay, right, that's right. So it's all about water. The more water you have in your system, the lower your blood pressure gets. Who likes swimming here? Great, only one. Okay, it's black people, so yeah, I get that. I get that. You don't want to muck up your hair, so, we don't want to swim. But great, if you like swimming, fantastic. Has anybody ever tried to swim in a swimming pool full of honey? Have you ever tried that?
No, you can't.
You can't do it. If you tried to do that, it would be so hard to pull yourself through. You wouldn't be able to do one width of a swimming pool. Well, that's what our blood is like when we don't have a lot of water, and it becomes very thick, right? So when your blood becomes thick, it's then harder to push the blood through the system. So you need more force. That's why your blood pressure has to rise. Your body knows more about science than you do. When you have high blood pressure, it's because you need high blood pressure. Did you know that? If you have high blood pressure, you need high blood pressure to push it through. Also, if your arteries are narrowing, you have a narrow tube to get lots of blood through. How can you get the same amount of blood through a narrow tube as you would a fat tube? By pushing it through quicker. To push it through quicker, you have to have higher blood pressure. And a good doctor comes along and says, oh, your blood pressure is too high, let me give you a tablet, let me lower it. What happens to the blood that's going through this narrow artery? There's not enough blood going through. So even when you're on your medication, you can have strokes, heart failure, all sorts of things, because we're just trying to cover up the deep-rooted cause. We're just doing the symptoms. What you have to do is naturally open up the arteries, and that's what you have to try to do. Now, I always say hypertension is a disease, but I say it is more of a warning of something worse that's coming. I think, yes, if you're having lots of stress hormones in your system, hypertension is bad, but cancer, anxiety, depression, Alzheimer's disease, and inflammatory bowel disease is much worse. And what it's telling you, that high blood pressure is telling you that it's around the corner. This was the first car I ever bought. This is a Peugeot 205 1.9 GTI. Okay, some of you know what I'm talking about. This was my first car. First car, that's a pretty good car for your first. Now, I had to save every single penny I had to buy that car and borrow as well. When I bought this car, because it was at the limit of what I could hardly afford any petrol to go in it, okay? Warning lights started to go off very quickly because I bought a very rubbish car. It was really quite poor. But I couldn't afford to fix the car. So I just had to live with the warning lights. Until one day, loads of steam came out of the engine and it stopped right in the middle of the street, everybody looking at me. I had to borrow some money to get a van to come and take the car away, and it was very expensive. And that's exactly what it's like with high blood pressure. High blood pressure is a warning to you. It's a warning that something worse is going to happen down the road unless you change your lifestyle. You must turn around your lifestyle. Just taking a pill or whatever is not going to do it. You have to turn your lifestyle around. I love this definition of disease from Ellen White. You can't get a better definition than this. Disease is the effort of nature to free the system from conditions that result from a violation of the laws of health. When you get a disease, it is your body's attempt to free you from what you're doing to it. As I said, high blood pressure, it goes up because your arteries are narrowing. Why are your arteries narrowing? Because there's too much fat and cholesterol, there's too much stress going on. So your body responds with high blood pressure. Beautiful definition, I don't think it can be beat. Okay, we've done that, let's move on. So obviously a healthy plant-based diet, is the first step to opening up your arteries. Let me tell you something very interesting. Greens. Do you like eating greens? Greens are some of the most powerful tools for opening up your arteries. When you eat greens, the most powerful one, I think you call it arugula here.
Yes.
We call it rocket salad. So arugula is the most powerful. And what happens is when you digest greens, that chlorophyll, as it's being broken down, it tells the interior of your arteries to release a chemical. Your own arteries release a chemical called nitric oxide. Nitric oxide opens up the arteries, therefore the blood pressure goes down. By the way, nitric oxide is the active ingredient of Viagra. Nobody's heard of Viagra. Only the women have heard of Viagra, so it seems. All the men are just saying, well, what is this? What is this drug? Never heard of it, never needed it, whatever. Okay, but we know. So many of us suffer from, no, I won't say that. Many of you suffer from erectile dysfunction. It is a serious problem. It is a serious problem. But here is this wonderful ingredient, greens. They open up the arteries naturally. And by the way, erectile dysfunction is a lifestyle disease. The worst thing you can do if you have erectile dysfunction is just go to your doctor and get a tablet. Okay, that doesn't deal with the problem. Let me tell you something about erectile dysfunction briefly. If you have one episode of erectile dysfunction, one, your risk of a stroke or a heart attack goes up 400%. In the next 5 years, you're much more likely to have a stroke because what's happening down there is happening all over your body. Your arteries are closing down, so you're much more at risk of having a stroke or a heart attack. So just getting a pill is not the answer. What you have to do is reverse the whole heart disease. You must exercise. It doesn't have to be difficult. Walking every day is fantastic. Given a good hour of walking every single day, I think we can all do that. Oh, but I don't have time, Dr. Chidi, I've got family things to do. Look, I have seen people who have said to me, I don't have time to walk. I don't have time to make the right food. Then when they get the stroke and they're stuck in bed for the rest of their life, they have all the time in the world. You have to take the time now, or you have to take it later. There are no real excuses. There are no real shortcuts. So exercise. What type of exercise? I always say the best exercise is the exercise you like doing the most. Okay, but walking is absolutely fantastic. So we go back to the initial text. Guard your heart with all diligence, for out of it spring the issues of life. I don't know if you realize this is a remarkable text. Scientifically, it's remarkable. I'll tell you why. Because what it's saying, out of the heart comes the issues of life. You know, what comes out of the heart? Blood. The issue of blood. Well, that blood gives life to the tissues. That's what it's actually saying. I don't know if you realize this, but until the year 1624, when William Harvey made a discovery, we didn't know what the function of blood was. So people were bleeding all the time on battlefield. People were bleeding, but we didn't know what blood did. This text tells us that this issue of blood gives life to the tissues. That's interesting. But there's something even deeper in this message. Guard your heart above all things, in all diligence, because out of it flow the issues of life. The issues of life don't come from your neighbor, or your spouse, or your job. The issues of life come from our own heart. I don't think you understand me. The problems we feel we have in life do not come from somebody else. They come from us. Oh, hold on. What are you telling me? If somebody's being mean to me, if somebody has abused me, that's what they've done. Well, they have done it. But the issue in your life is dependent on your response. You can't avoid people doing bad things to you. But how you respond determines your life. These things can make you bitter or they can make you better. Depends on your response. You know, you may have heard about this book, Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. He says that between the stimulus and the response, there is a space. And that space is the choice that we make. So even if, like him, you've been through the Holocaust and the concentration camps, you can still keep your peace based on the choices you make. Are you able to let go? Are you able to, dare I use the word, forgive? By adopting this, and by adopting this sort of pattern of living, forgiving, being gentle, letting go, you find that all of the health indicators go up. Your blood pressure goes down, your blood sugar goes down, the rates of cancer goes down, just by letting go of some of these issues. Now, I'm going to be talking more about these things later in the week. I don't know if we have this video. It probably won't work. No, it won't work. Okay, we'll pause there, and I'm going to be open for questions. So if we've got some roving mics that can go around, if you have a question, put your hand up, we'll come to you. If you don't have any questions, we can finish quite quickly. Okay, we can finish quickly, no questions. We can go. Thank you very much. Yes.
Dr. Chidi, thank you for your noble presentation.
Yes, thank you.
Very simple to those of us who don't understand the medical language that is used in hospitals. Now, you showed a picture of kale, all those vegetables
greens,
that you showed up there, and you were advising us that should be the basic that we should have in our homes. Should we cook them? You know, African women like cooking stuff.
Only African women.
Or you want them to be eaten raw, or perhaps somewhere in the middle?
Yeah, okay,
Please.
that's nice. I think a variety is good, because it's great to have raw veg, it's great to have raw greens, but some of the vegetables that we have benefit by having them cooked a little bit, okay? You're not really going to lose much of the nutrients by cooking them, I'll tell you that. So however you want to take it, I would take it. But I would encourage you to have at least some of it raw. Some of it raw. It doesn't have to be all raw. Hands up if you have a question.
Thank you. Mine is about individuals are very slim on the body size, and you find they have hypertension. So I used to believe somebody that maybe is obese has hypertension, but I have a relative that is so slim but is hypertensive.
Yes. Why is that? Okay, so that's a very good question as well. So some of us, I may be talking about this on Monday as well, but it doesn't matter. Some of us believe that if you are slim, you must be healthy. That's not true. In fact, slim people, many slim people, have to lose a lot of fat. That doesn't make sense. Let me explain. There is what we call subcutaneous fat. That's the fat that we can see. When we see people overweight, that's subcutaneous fat. But then there's a different type of fat. We call it visceral fat. Visceral fat is the fat that exists around your organs. You can be incredibly slim, especially when you see a person who's very slim but they eat unhealthily. You say, well, how can that be? I guarantee they've got lots of visceral fat. Visceral fat is much more dangerous than the subcutaneous fat. The visceral fat is the one that really stimulates you to get cancer and heart disease and all those other things. But also, in terms of blood pressure, I'll tell you what, you can have the best diet on the planet, you can be exercising every day, drinking the purest water, but still have sky-high blood pressure. Why is that? Because you're stressed, because you're mean, because you can't forgive, the blood pressure is going to be there. Stress hormones will be released from your brain daily, which shoves your blood pressure up. Or you may be just afraid or anxious about something. All of those things lead you to have sky-high blood pressure. Great. Who's next? You got the mic.
Yeah, I know you talked about the high blood pressure. I know you said plant-based. So is all plant-based food good for high blood pressure? All of them?
Plant-based food, yes, absolutely. The more plants in your body, the better. You know, the fact that God designed this beautiful garden for Adam and Eve, that was the perfect recipe for them. The more plants, the better. But it's good to have a variety. So vegetables, greens, beans, seeds, fruit, all of those things. Okay, so they're all good for you. Yes. Yes, you got the mic.
Sorry, to add on that, I know my sister asked about plant-based. When we go to our doctors, they say reduce starch. Corn is part of plant-based. Potatoes is part of plant-based. Is there a way that you can educate us more on how to identify which is the best one? Because they say reduce your starch, reduce your carbohydrates.
Why do they say reduce your carbohydrate? Why?
Quantity.
Sorry?
Quantity.
So reduce the quantity. So here's the important thing. There are good carbohydrates and bad carbohydrates. Good carbohydrates are the things I've just spoken about. Vegetables are carbohydrates, fruit is carbohydrate. There is no point on this earth to reduce them. That can't improve your health. The more of that you eat, the better. Because, in fact, it's nearly impossible to eat too much of that in its natural form because it's full of fiber and it will fill you up before you can take too many calories in. But there is bad carbohydrates, I'll use that word bad, refined carbohydrates. So certain types of breads and cakes and biscuits and all of that stuff, refined carbohydrates, we should avoid those like the plague. But the natural carbohydrates that God has given us to eat, they actually protect us. Even diabetics, I reverse diabetes pretty much more than I do anything else. 50% of the work is reversing diabetes. People still eat fruit whilst I'm doing it, but they just don't have the refined carbohydrates. But that's a good point, thank you.
You alluded to the fact that geography is part of the reason why Africa...
Sorry, I can't hear. Sorry. Sorry, I can't hear.
Yeah, you alluded to the fact that geography is part of the reason that Africans or black people get high blood pressure. Because Africa is generally warm or hot. Does that apply to the people from the Middle East, like the Arabs?
Yes, so, I mean, we have a shade of colours, don't we? We have a shade of colours. So there's nobody who naturally lives in the Middle East who is white like an Irishman. They have pigment in their skin for the same reason. So they are not quite as likely to have high blood pressure as us, but they're on their way.
But parts of the Middle East, like if you look at the northern part, are quite cold during winter months. So
yes. So what's your point? But it's hot as well, right?
That they do share the cold climate like the Europeans.
Yeah. Are you saying that the Middle East has similar climate to Northern Europe?
No.
No. So that's my point.
But there are parts of Iran that can be quite cold.
Okay. Anywhere can be quite cold, but we're looking at the average. There's no way that the Middle East, wherever you are, is going to be like Scotland. No way. Yeah. Thank you. We can't hear you, though. We can't hear you.
It's not working?
No, it's not working. I don't think it's working.
Okay. I am vegan. And kind of, I try to cook some vegan meals for church and whatever. The hardest challenge is someone who eats meat. To start transitioning from eating meat. One, meat is loved, even if there is church barbecue meat. sessions.
But you're just trying to make everyone hungry.
No, I'm not.
What's the question?
So
Give me the question.
My question is, I used to eat meat, and it's a challenge to just quit.
Okay.
I didn't mean to offend anyone.
Okay,
Here.
that's okay.
So, what is the process to go through? Should someone be intentioning to, abandon meat eating foods and start, towards being vegan?
I've got your question. Okay, that's good. And that's important because not everybody finds it easy. Some people can just transition immediately. That's fine. Other people who just like that texture of meat, look, have some of those meat substitutes. That's fine for me. You're on that way, you're transitioning, because especially those people who used to eat red meat, many of those substitutes which are soya-based, sometimes pea-based, are still much healthier than having the meat. Absolutely. And then all I would say to you is, whilst you're transitioning, even if you have your little bit of meat, make sure you're putting in lots of vegetables, lots of fruits, and you're just getting your palate used to the transition. If you just keep having the meat substitutes just with potatoes or chips or something like that, your palate will never change. You will always want that sort of food. You have to add more fruits, more vegetables, more greens. But yes, it's a continuum, it's a process, but it's an important question. Yes?
What do you advise or tell people who say that they find benefit from like the carnivore diet or keto diet, and they show you their labs and they show you they've lost weight and this type of thing?
Yeah, that's a good one. So you've heard about the carb diets and the keto diets, and even certain people will swear by it and they've lost weight, and some people have reversed certain diseases with it as well, by the way. So let me make something clear, because it's possible. It is possible. I did a debate last year with some very eminent doctors from around the world who pretty much advocate just eating meat. I mean, they've got their research and all of that. That's wonderful. But here's the principle. Health must be holistic. It must be.
Yes.
Now, you can do things to your body that can get rid of certain disease. Maybe it can make you lose weight. But often there's a price to pay down the line, because our bodies were not designed, and I mean this, were not designed to consume lots of meat. In fact, any meat. The fact that our gut is as long as it is tells us that it wasn't designed to consume meat. And here's some evidence for you. Everybody's heard of antioxidants, right? Are they good or are they bad? Good. Everybody talks about antioxidants. How much antioxidants are present in meat? None. Absolutely none. You can only get them from plant-based material. And so that's kind of telling the world what we were designed for. These beautiful antioxidants that can actually treat us. So you may lose weight on your keto diet, but your kidneys 10, 15 years down the line will be overworked and they'll be shot. So if what I say to people is, look, if I'm treating you for diabetes, the program that I put you on should help with every other area of your body too, as a side effect. And that's how God designed us. So he designed us. You know, our bodies always want to heal itself. Did you know that? Yeah. Our bodies are designed to heal itself. If I hit myself on the arm, it will bruise, right? That's starting the healing process. That's how we work. If I keep hitting myself on the arm, well, it won't be able to heal. So it will get bruised and it will break down and have a wound, and I might even lose the arm. What we have to do is stop hitting ourselves with all of these toxins, and the body tends to want to heal itself. But meat, what it does, it may help in one area, but it will take away from another. Great. Next question. Oh, yes.
We have a culture, a tribe in Kenya,
yes,
which is fully dependent on on meat.
Yes.
And that's the Maasai people.
Yes.
They eat a lot of meat,
Yes.
actually, for their lifestyle.
They do.
So I'm just wondering what keeps them going.
Mm-hmm.
Another question I have is about animal products like eggs,
Mm-hmm.
milk.
Yeah.
Do things affect the body the same way meat affects the body.
Okay, so let's start with the Maasai. I had the privilege of meeting a load of Maasai last year. I think these guys were a bit short, though. The Maasai are usually tall. But I met I don't know which tribe I was on. Maybe they weren't even Maasai. Maybe that was it. But yes, so the Maasai, yes, they eat a lot of meat. In fact, let me go further. They do even worse than that. They do even, hold on a second, one second. They do even worse than that. Yes, they do blood, but they do blood mixed with milk, right? Yes. So for somebody like me, this is terrible. Terrible. But look at the Maasai. Look at them. They're fit. They're walking around every day. Hold on a second. This is a principle that you have to understand. Tomorrow I'm talking about cancer. There are some people in China who smoke 60 cigarettes a day, but will rarely ever get cancer. I wonder why. Because that's a very toxic thing to do. But the interesting thing is, every other area of their lives is fantastic. If you look at the Maasai, the diet is terrible. But they hardly ever sit down. They're always outside. They're always exercising. Hold on. So their stress levels are lower. So everything else is fantastic. But they have one thing that's terrible, their diet, which is very bad. That overcomes a lot of their problems. And by the way, you talk to the Maasai, they're not free of disease. They have all kinds of weird diseases based on what they are consuming. But fit-wise, most of them are fitter than me. Most. I'm not saying all. But yes, so if you have one area of your life that's pretty poor, but the rest is fantastic, you can still overcome. Now that's not an excuse for everybody to say, well, Dr. Chidi said I can eat chocolate cake as long as I do everything else. No, but the more of the good stuff you do, the less of the bad stuff will affect you. That's true. And the next question was, okay, meat as opposed to eggs and milk. So for me, and you'll find out through the week, I talk a lot against milk. Milk is really a terrible toxic, cow's milk is a terrible toxic thing for our bodies. Eggs are not quite so bad, I don't really recommend them. But in terms of disease, milk and red meat are pretty much on the same plane. Chicken, however, some people love chicken, especially black people love chicken. Yeah, I can hear that. The sad thing is this. Sodium, right? Sodium, that raises our blood pressure. 80% of the sodium that most of us get comes from chicken. Now, why should that be? It's because they're all injected with all sorts of things to make their muscles look bigger. It's usually salt water. So if you were just to eliminate chicken, you could start to lower your blood pressure. Okay, great. Next question.
Okay.
Next question.
My question is on intermittent fasting. I have read articles that intermittent fasting can help the body to reset, burn unwanted fat, increase insulin sensitivity, and even starve cancer cells to death. What is your take on that?
I think it's amazing that you and I and people for several thousand years have been opening up the Bible and it's talking about fasting, right? How come it's been co-opted by a group of people who say, oh yeah, we've discovered this new thing called intermittent fasting. God has been telling us to fast for a long time. Yes, and I'll tell you this. I don't think there is a more powerful tool in medicine than fasting. Amen. Okay, for everything. In fact, this is not me talking, actually. There have been so many studies done on monkeys, on rats, on humans. The more they fast, obviously they have to eat something, but the more they fast, the longer they live. Now, I come from Great Britain, and, I guess Great Britain is considered to be quite a wealthy country. In the 1940s, when we were going through the Second World War, we weren't so wealthy. In fact, we had to have rations for our food. You could only eat this much sugar, this much milk. In those days, we lived longer, and we had less disease. There was hardly any diabetes, hardly any heart disease, because we were rationed. We had to eat less. In fact, it's like a longer type of fast. The more you can fast, the better. That's the answer. Great.
Just before the next question, we can stay here all night with questions.
We'll take 2 more. Yeah?
So we'll take 2 more so that you can come back tomorrow. Amen?
Yes. Okay.
So if you have any questions, Sister Sally, please rise up. Make sure you send them to Sister Sally. Every evening, Dr. Chidi will be beginning by answering those questions. So every night, we'll have this Q&A. Say, Sister Sally, we'll take the last 2 for tonight.
Dr. Chidi, I know many people who do not eat meat, do not eat chicken. They like to eat fish. And I've seen most of them, they like a kind of fish, especially those from Africa. They like to eat tilapia. I like tilapia. So, is there anything eating fish? And which one is? If there is, you can eat fish. It's good for your body. Which kind of fish?
You're asking me which is the right fish to eat?
You as a doctor, which one should I take?
So if I was going to say which fish to eat, do you think I'd say anything different to what it says in the book of Leviticus? You understand me?
No, can you please again take?
Okay, so, right. I'm not going to say anything different to what God tells us to eat in terms of fish. The ones that have scales, the ones that have fins, both of them, those are the clean ones to eat. However, today, very difficult to find fish that are not filled with pollution. It doesn't matter even if they're organic. Very difficult to get fish that don't have mercury in every cell. Those of you who like to take cod liver oil tablets, they're all full of mercury too. You can't separate mercury out. That's just one toxin I'm talking about. But all the things that we like or think are health and benefits from fish, like omega-3, we can get those from loads of different places. Flax seeds, linseeds. It's not necessary to have fish. You can have it from any other way. But if you're going to eat fish, I'll tell you the number 1 fish in terms of health benefits would be salmon. Wild Atlantic salmon, that is the highest a load of omega-3. But as I say, you do not need salmon to get omega-3.
Yeah, mine takes us to menopause and hypertension. Would you speak something on that early regarding high blood pressure and the menopause?
Yes, well, as I said, your blood pressure goes up the less estrogen you have in your system. So when you're going through the menopause, your estrogen goes down and your blood pressure can go up. It doesn't have to go up, depending. By the way, if you go to China and most northern Asian countries, they don't have the same levels of menopause as we have in the West. They don't have the same number of symptoms, and there's a very interesting reason for that, is because throughout their lives they have less cow's milk. They have more soya products. In fact, maybe I'll go on to that tomorrow. I'll talk more about that tomorrow. But the fact that throughout their lives they have fewer dairy products and more soya products, it actually protects them from the worst symptoms of menopause. And so they don't get all the symptoms and they don't get the high blood pressure at the same time. Anyway, thank you very much. It's been very good. I've appreciated being here. As I say, tomorrow I'll be back and there'll be more questions. Thank you.
Amen. Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Chidi, for that very, very informative session that we've had. So that you can come tomorrow. So we have to end here because I see people starting to fall asleep. So you're tired. Kaka, Tubiri. No, we're tired. All right. So we'll come back tomorrow. 10 in the morning, we will have a program. But come at 8 o'clock to volunteer to set up the God's closet outside. Please, I'm asking you, come at 8. The people from Minnetonka Church will be here to help us set up outside in the morning. So God bless you. Thank you for today. Right now we are going to have a personal ministry meet upstairs for a few minutes at the boardroom as we go home. Let us all stand as we pray for this afternoon. Let us pray. Lord, we thank you for the Sabbath, and thank you for the wonderful, wonderful presentations we've had today. We ask that you bless us as we go from here. May you bring us again tomorrow so that we can continue to be blessed together. This is our prayer in Jesus' name.